put on this veil of responsibility and have grown as people, but then they end up getting thrown back together. So it was figuring out, like, obviously I do my prep. I know Becky, so we had great conversations. Amy Force, our director, was wonderful. So we had a lot of great conversations about how do you find that authenticity and balance between these two sides of these people.
Welcome everyone to this exciting interview segment. Today at Survival Shows, we have the great pleasure to have Corey Sevier, star of the UPtv movie, The Love Club Moms, Do, and the other chapter of the Love Club Moms movies. And
Sure.
join us as we delve into Corey's insights into his character and the challenging of filming these movies. Thank you for being here with us, Corey.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. So, talking about your character on the Love Club Moms too, how did you prepare to portray Ryan's complex position as both Joe's former fiancé and the father of their son, Simon?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. That's a great question because the duality was the first thing that struck me about playing Ryan. Because as you said, he's the father. He's a father. He's kind of sharing custody with his son Simon, and at the same time he is the former flame, former fiance
Yeah,
of Joe's character, and those two sides of him are quite different. And that was really a big appeal to me with the character. And yeah, so in terms of preparation, it's funny, and we'll get into it in subsequent questions, but I've worked with Rebecca Dalton, Becky Dalton before. This was actually our third film together. So I knew Becky. And I knew that we had to find this sort of youthful, kind of impulsive, passionate side of our relationship. They were like borderline delinquents when they were young, not bad, but like they were troublemakers and things like that. And then you find them all these years later in obviously different positions. She's a school principal, he's a father. So they've both kind of put on this veil of responsibility and have grown as people, but then they end up getting thrown back together. So it was figuring out, like, obviously I do my prep. I know Becky, so we had great conversations. Amy Force, our director, was wonderful. So we had a lot of great conversations about how do you find that authenticity and balance between these two sides of these people. But what I loved is I think that's very authentic because I think people do have multiple sides to themselves, and at different parts of your life, kind of one part might take over more than the other. And the idea of sort of stripping away the layers of responsibility to get back to that sort of impulsive passion was really, really exciting. So yeah, I just kind of focused on thinking back to when I was young, or people that I knew that were maybe like Ryan when I was young. And obviously, bouncing off of Becky, who's such a wonderful person and actress, it kind of made my job easy.
amazing. And as you say now, Ryan and Joe have history. They married impulsively at the age of 19.
Yeah.
What memories or emotion did you draw on to capture that youthful intensity?
Yeah, it's funny. It's a mixture of that was sort of, again, I credit Amy, our director, because we want, we're grown adults now, and we're like sneaking around the school, not to give too much away, but they're really going back to like things they did when they were teenagers, and it's like we want to make sure that it feels authentic. But I think because I had that relationship with Becky because we had done those films together. There was so much trust there that I didn't get the sense that there was any sort of apprehension to go there and to be kind of, crazy and fun and youthful and off the wall. And if I, as an actor, that's very fun and very freeing. And her character being the principal, very kind of buttoned up at the beginning of the film, I looked at it as my job to poke her, to like to kind of strip away those layers. So I really tried to be as playful, and even when we were allowed to do a little bit of improvisation here and there, things to surprise her. So yeah, again, in terms of the preparation for that, it was just sort of being free and open as much as we could. Working with Amy, our director would say, okay, let's push the delinquent a bit more, let's push the playfulness, or let's pull it back, and hopefully we found a really fun balance to make these characters three-dimensional. But I even thought about, for some reason, I thought about Greece a lot. Like I just, for some, that kind of wild, kind of, because, in Greece, those characters had sort of similar archetypes, whereas Ryan was a bit of a bad boy and Joe was a little bit more buttoned up, but he brings out kind of this wild side in her. And there was like talk of it being sort of like a classic love story, like a little bit of an old school retro thing. Even the car, the hot rod that he's always fixing up, like all those elements, I was like, this is so fun. It's like Greece within sort of the framework of a modern romance. So.
Amazing. And diving deep in the scenes of the Love Moms Club Joe, in scenes where Ryan confronts Joe about co-parenting challenges, how did you and Rebecca Dalton work to maintain authenticity in your on-screen chemistry?
Yeah, again, with Becky is so wonderful, and what was fun was in our two previous films, we played characters that there was some conflict, but this was the first time I got to work with Becky, and she was like very fiery and very and I loved seeing that side of Becky, just having become such good friends over the years. And the same thing with me. She kept going, I love seeing this side of you. And obviously, we're playing characters and whatnot, but that we genuinely had so much fun on the set because I think those characters allowed us to go places that you don't normally go in your real life. And the parenting aspect, obviously I have two kids. So I also brought to that, like, there is a real sense of like real life. I understand what that responsibility is like, and how certain things have to take priority. And so I tried to sort of bring my own personal experience where I could to that character. And then, as I said before, sort of just poking Becky, watching her get mad, and then also allowing Ryan, because that was the thing that I loved about Ryan and Joe's relationship is they both know each other on a level that probably most other people in their adult lives don't know. And I loved how I always saw it as it's like a 0 to 60 with them. And if someone else had said something to Ryan that Joe's character had, he wouldn't react that way. But there's so much history, there's so much passion that it went from like he'd go from like happy to mad or whatever it is, argumentative very quickly. And that's fun. That's very freeing as an actor. And like I said, our director kind of kept saying, yeah, don't worry about it. Go there, go there. We can always pull it back. So yeah, we just kind of went for it. And, I get to spray, he's cleaning the car and he sprays it with water and we're driving the hot rod and doing all those great things. And we just were having a lot of fun and being like, hey, let's just pretend we were kids, 20 years ago and what would we do? So.
Amazing. And talking about the environments on set, diving deep, produced by Nikki Ray Media, sorry, and Corey Studios for Review W Network. Did the assembly's collaborative atmosphere influence your approach to the character development?
Yes, absolutely. So the four leads of the entire series, Becky, Rebecca being one of them, Ashley, Nazneen, and Janelle Williams, who I'd worked with before too. And Janelle is absolutely wonderful. So I knew two of the four leading ladies, and I knew of Ashley and Nazneen's work and was a fan. So I was very excited to get to meet them and going on set because the way we shot it, they shot all four of them simultaneously. So there would be days where I'd be there, and then there would be long stretches where I wasn't. And the four leading ladies were working all the time on four different scripts simultaneously, and they were incredible. And the friendship that they have on screen, they became, I mean, it was from my observation, became very close during the filming. And you felt that. You walked onto set and the camaraderie was really there. So it was very, I mean, I didn't have a lot of scenes with the other actresses, but just behind the scenes, it was really fun to watch how much like they hung out off set together. That was very authentic, that friendship. So when I came into it, I was, you come in and they've established that sort of relationship and chemistry. And it worked for me because Ryan is kind of this mystery character that comes into Joe's life and brings out this side of Joe that none of the other girls knew that she had. And it was kind of like, oh, Corey's on set today, and Joe's gonna, or Becky's gonna be doing these kind of wilder scenes, and I think that kind of just made for a fun, and obviously they were extremely welcoming, and we all became really good friends. So yeah, it was the friendship you see on screen, I sense was very much there in real life too, and I think that makes a difference. The same with Becky and I. We love working together so much that I do think it just allows us to find more nuance and fun within, what we're given to work with. So.
That's great. So, change of subject now, talking about your career in general. Looking back at your transition from child actor roles like Timmy Cabot to adult leads, what have been the biggest shifts in how you choose projects?
That's a great, great question. Well, going back to, as you said, I started acting when I was very young. It was a passion. I kind of, I fell into it, started, acting in professional projects when I was, 7 years old. And at that time, you audition and you want to get whatever role comes your way. So my approach to acting was I loved it all. I always, even from a young age, had a sense that I wanted to have as much diversity in the roles that I choose, to keep, challenging myself, different things. So basically, but at that stage, you're starting out acting, you're looking for whatever comes your way, and a role like Timmy in Lassie came along that had such a legacy. I always refer to it as my acting school because you're doing 4 seasons of a show. You're working with veteran actors, all the adult actors, but you have the pressure to carry a show. So that was an incredible experience, and I continued to work throughout my teens, and it was the same thing. And I was fortunate that I got some really, part of it is luck, part of it is hard work and preparation, and those were kind of all those things, and also maintaining my parents were instrumental. Like in the beginning of my career, I couldn't have done any of it without, the support of my parents, the physical support of being there for a child actor, but also just the mental support of, the highs and lows, the ups and downs. You don't get certain jobs, as well as just when you do have success or you're fortunate enough to get roles, to maintain a sense of you're still taking out the garbage, you got to get your homework done, all that sort of thing. So maintaining like a healthy view of this is cool, but also it's not real life. So that's where it all started. And by the time I was getting into my 20s, I really was looking to stretch myself, and I was really looking to try, hoping that roles would come my way, that would like be completely different from my own personality. As I said, characters playing villains and doing horror movies and thrillers and things like that. But then as I really, segued into adulthood, you get to a certain age, at least, from my perspective, you start getting more of, the traditional leading man roles, a lot of romances started coming up. And that was really interesting because it allowed me, whereas I played so many characters, that were unlike me sort of in my earlier career, to play more roles that had more of my true self in them, or at least, more representative of real life. And that was a fun challenge to kind of open up yourself more, to expose yourself more. And I think that maturity and life experience really helped me embrace getting those kind of roles. And then, of course, you try and find the nuance within each character within that. And in terms of picking roles, as I said, sometimes as an actor, you're just hoping to get what comes your way. But I have been fortunate that, I've gotten to it, I'm starting to produce my own things. So, I try to put roles in that are challenging, but as a parent, you also pick roles just based on logistics of life, of where you're at, time away from your family, roles that your kids might see down the road. Like you do start to factor in, like the young me was like, I'll take whatever because, if it's different, if it's exciting, I'm going to do it. And I still very much have that spirit, but you do take an extra moment to pick and choose because there are just more, there's like Ryan in the Love Club, there's more responsibility to factor in. But I'm very fortunate to have, to have a wife and a family that's very supportive, continues to be supportive of what I do. And I try to repay that by selecting things that are exciting to me, and hopefully don't take me away from my family too much.
Great. So, talking about voice roots, you voiced Mega Man Bullnut in Mega Man Legends. How does voice acting challenge you differently compared to on-camera work?
Yes, that's another great question. It's Mega Man was
Yeah.
it's funny that that is sort of a one-off for me. That was the one video game voiceover role that I ever did. And I still to this day have people who are huge fans of the game get very excited about Mega Man. And like sort of Lassie, this sort of legacy of that game is very exciting. And I can tell you a very brief story about my experience. It was sort of like I said, I did do some commercial work in voiceover, and you're right. It's challenging because for me it was interesting because you just focus so much on the voice that you kind of you can be in there wearing a hoodie and stuff, and the challenge of not being on camera, you try to find ways to work. And I by no means am an expert. There are so many wonderful actors out there that have done really great work in the voiceover. But when I did do it, I really enjoyed it. I tried to bring energy to it, and then focus on like how do I just use my voice to articulate, emotion, whereas, the physicality that you have when you're on screen, that was what I was more used to. But coming back to Mega Man, so they had already recorded all of the international actors, the Japanese actors that had done the original voice of Mega Man, and so they needed, someone to come in and do all the English dubbing, and that was I'll never forget it. It was an extremely long day. We did the entire video game in a single day, and what was so challenging was the dialogue that was in the game that I had to do was had originally been said in Japanese. So I had to figure out sometimes how to say something in Japanese was much longer or much shorter than it would be in English. So sometimes there would be this large paragraph, and the previous actor had said it so quickly that I had to speak faster than I ever remember speaking in my life, or we would have to make slight adjustments to get the point across. And then subsequently with like certain what would be in English a shorter way to say something was much longer. So I found myself laughing and like, how do I say this thing and like stretch it out really much longer? And anyway, in the end, it was just such a fun and different challenge that I'd ever had in my career. And I think I was maybe about 12 or 13 at the time. And yeah, I just feel very fortunate and honored to be a very small part of the Mega Man legacy. And as my son gets older and he's getting more into like knowing about video games and things like that, I think he's going to get a real kick out of it if I can find the old game to be like, that's Daddy's voice. So anyway, it's really fun.
Great. Thank you for sharing this story about video games.
Oh,
And
no problem.
in your career, you covered so much a variety of characters, having played Apollo in Immortal, for example, and rugged small town characters in Cedar Cove. Which type of role do you find more creatively and fulfilling?
The short answer is I love all characters. They all bring different challenges. The small town, characters like in Cedar Cove and a lot of the Christmas films I've done are really fun because they said I'm a pretty, down to earth, kind of guy. So you feel like you're kind of walking on a set with a lot of yourself, and then obviously you're playing with nuances for whatever character you're playing. Something like Immortals, and I'm a very physical person. I've always loved sports, working out. I did martial arts growing up, and so I personally, whenever there's a character that requires me to push myself physically, it gets me very excited. So I'm definitely drawn to things that have more action or some sort of physical skill that I have to prepare. But I equally love playing the small town coffee shop guy. So in terms of genre, I'm always looking for things that I haven't done, or if it is something that I've done before, how can I bring something slightly different to it but still make it authentic? So I'm always open to whatever the challenge is. And some characters are more physically demanding, and some characters are more sort of on the mental side, the emotional side, and I love. And if you can find a role that requires all three of those elements, then that's your dream role right there. So for me anyway.
That's great. So, with a career spanning over 30 years, what strategy have you developed for managing the industry's highs and lows?
Yes. Well, first of all, it takes a lot of luck. I still pinch myself that I'm doing it, after all these years. But it started with the passion that I had for it. I fell in love with it. The first project that I ever did when I was 7, I had the fortunate to I worked with Angelica Houston, who played my mom in a miniseries called Family Pictures, and Sam Neill of Jurassic Park and so many other amazing projects played my father. They were both incredibly wonderful people to work with. They made me feel extremely comfortable, and I remember I could barely sleep the night before. I was so excited to get on set. So that passion I still have. I still get that excitement, and obviously my career has moved into a direction where not only do I get to act, but I'm starting to direct projects, which is just an extension of the storytelling process, which I've always loved so much. So in terms of sticking with it for 30 years, you have to have a huge amount of passion. You have to have luck. And you also have to, as you said, ride the highs and the lows. So, when I was young, the disappointment, the rejection aspect of the business was harder. I was lucky to have an amazing support around me. You have to develop a thick skin. And I think as I've gotten into my adulthood, being on the other side, being in the casting side of things, you really start to realize how there's only so much an actor can control about. So, and that's actually I found really freeing to say, look, control what you can, do your absolute best, but outside of that, there are things you can't change your essence or who you are, how you look, whatever they or happen to be looking for. So it's kind of cliche, but you just focus on your passion, focus on doing your best, and the rest of it kind of will fall whichever way the chips go, if you will. So yeah, so that's very much my approach to it. And you have to, and also I would say if you can find other passions too, because like you said, that there's a pull. There's moments where you're going to be extremely busy. When you get success, kind of a surge of success, don't get too high in terms of thinking about, it's just enjoy that process and know that there's inevitably going to be a dip, but just stick with it if you love it. And that's what I've done my whole career. And as you age, different roles come your way. Obviously, moving into 30s into 40s, I'm getting different roles than I would have when I was a kid. And if you love acting and you love the challenge of different characters, that's a real joy to be like, okay, I'm at this stage in my life now. What am I learning in real life? What can I bring experience wise to hopefully make this interesting? So
That's great. That's inspirational. So,
thank
uh,
you.
change of subject again, talking about your aspiration in life. How does collaborating with your wife, Kate Prognell, as a writer producer influence your own storytelling instincts?
Oh, well, first of all, just, I'm very fortunate to have her in my life. And when we met many years ago, we both had such an incredible passion for storytelling. And we knew, outside of all the other wonderful things we've been able to do, start a family and all of that, that we wanted to do it and wanted to do it together. So, without gushing too much and going over the top, I mean, it's kind of a dream come true to have a creative partner. We have a very similar sensibility on the kind of stories and art that we want to create. She's, again, speaking from a biased place, but she's absolutely amazing at what she does. And she brings so many, and unlike me, she doesn't have a background in film and television. Like I grew up doing it and she found it later in life. So she has all this other life experience that was different from mine because I spent a lot of my childhood growing up on sets. So I'd like to think that we both bring different elements to the table, but with a similar goal in mind. We have so much trust in each other. And here we are now. We've been able to do 5 projects, 4 films, and in our first short film together. And we have so many more things that we're working on that we want to do. And it's very time consuming. It really, if you want to do something well, I'm a big believer and you put your heart and soul into it. And the fact that I get to do it with my life partner, because it does occupy a lot of our time. The fact that we're doing it while spending time together is an added bonus. So anyway, I could go on and on and on, but I'm very lucky to have her in my life, and we love doing these things together and riding the challenges of the business together. And we have each other as support too. So we've found something really really unique and special, I think. And we're going to keep on just plugging away at it.
That's amazing. Talking about your Canadian roots, growing up in Ajas, Ontario, how has your Canadian heritage shaped your perspective when working on US-based production?
Yeah, that's a really great question too. And to be honest, I didn't work in the United States until I was 17. So I started when I was 7. So I had 10 years of experience working as a Canadian actor. And I was very fortunate to grow up in Canada because a lot of productions would come up to Canada to shoot at that time. So there were a lot of opportunities for me. And I got to work a lot in film and television to be as prepared as I could for when those opportunities started coming up with, bigger productions in the US. So I've always been very great. Obviously, outside of that, growing up in Canada was a place where I would go and do these projects, but I would come back and at least when I was young, there wasn't as much hype around projects. Like I didn't have to deal with walking down the street and people recognizing me as much, I think, as I would have had I maybe grown up in LA or something like that. So I kind of got to maintain a really normal sense of childhood despite kind of an unusual way to grow up with the amount that I was working and stuff. So that was a really amazing foundation. But then, and obviously, the first time you get an opportunity to work on, I did a show called Black Sash, which was shot, the pilot was shot in the US. And, at first you're nervous, like, oh my gosh, it's Hollywood and all that. But what I found was amazing was every movie set, wherever it is in the world, is fundamentally the same. And even if it's a really small project, a commercial, a short film versus something like Immortals, which is just, hundreds of millions of dollar project, the process of making films are always the same. They could be bigger, more people involved, whatever it is. And that was a really comforting thing that I had that. And it was also comforting to know that anywhere I went in the world, you still have so many people that work so hard to make the films, the technicians, the hair and makeup, the directors, the ADs, all that. So I don't find there's that big of a difference in terms of the actual filmmaking process. It's more kind of what goes on around the films, the marketing aspect, and all that. So as I started doing, some of the more US based projects, obviously, that came with more press and more travel and stuff like that, which at that point, which I had grown up in the business, essentially, it was just really exciting for me to be able to talk more about all the things that I was working on. And of course, being a Canadian, it's I'm the cliche, love hockey, experience 4 seasons and things like that. So these are just little things that I'm really grateful to have had that experience, and now am equally as grateful to have worked in the United States and a little bit internationally as well, going all around the world. And I think there's an education in that, an experience that you gain from being there. And I'm very grateful for the time and the places I've seen. Some of the most amazing locations that I've worked at have been in the United States. Yeah, it's just been fun to explore both sides of North America. So.
Amazing. And we talk about your you are into directing and producing too. And I would like to ask you, which actors or filmmakers have inspired your evolution into directing and producing, and why?
Oh man, that's a great question. And I'm such a film and TV. Actually, when I was younger, it was mainly film, and now I feel like there's so much incredible TV that's being produced as well. I've kind of broadened my horizons, and um, in terms of directing specifically, I mean, I'd have to say someone like a Clint Eastwood is a huge influence because not only am I such a big fan of his films, he had a path where he started as an actor, he segued into directing. So even Ben Affleck's another example of an actor who did so much, and then some of my favorite films The Town, Argo, though, so I found them to be very inspiring to see how they've maintained an acting career while trying to expand. So those are two, fantastic examples. And, I look at a Clint Eastwood who has actually dabbled in so many different genres as a director. And my perspective on directing is very much that too. It's not as one specific story. It's the characters. It's the emotional journeys that the characters go on, and that's what really appeals to me. And whatever genre that's wrapped in, whether it's horror or drama or comedy or romance, I'm all there for it. So yeah, they've been, and obviously there's tons of actors that have inspired me as well. But those are two that come to mind immediately as people saying, "Wow, they're doing it," and that's a path that I would like to hopefully continue to work towards.
Great. So, the last question. Um, Beyond the Love Club Moms series, which upcoming films or series are you most excited to share with the audience? Uh,
Oh,
oh, acting and directing.
yes, that's a great. Yeah, there are. So I did a film just as an actor that's called Second Guessing Fate. I did it for the CW. It's a really fun rom-com. So I'm looking forward to that. Should be coming out this year, I'm presuming. I don't have exact dates yet, but we just shot that at the end of last year, and it was that was a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to the audience seeing that. I play a very grumpy character who ends up falling in love. So that's what I'll. He works at a museum. He's a museum curator, and that was fun. And then there's many things in the works that I'm working on with my wife Kate, and some other really exciting acting projects that are too soon that I can't tease it just yet. Because there are certain things that are still in the works, but we're hoping to be having a very busy spring and summer as we're working. So my wife and I have, we've really enjoyed, putting out the Christmas films that we've done this last few years, and we've really tried to push the envelope wherever we could with those. The Christmas charade last year, we did action scenes and things like that, and so we're trying to push that, but we also have, aspirations for some feature films and things like that. And we're working on mini series ideas. So we're keeping as busy as we can. And we certainly hope that we'll get some of these off the ground, and hopefully be able to bring some more meaningful stories to people.
Yeah, yeah. I hope to see you in another Christmas movies this year.
Yes, me too.
And so this is it. Make sure, all of you, to quote the Love Club Moms, Joe, this Sunday night on UpTV. And thank you, Corey, to join us today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
It's a pleasure for me. And thank you all for watching. Bye!
Bye, guys. Thanks. Bye.